Go. Hey, Aaron here, and I have with me today Tomek. How are you today?
Good, thank you, and greetings from Poland.
How are things out there in Poland?
Super warm. I have no idea how it is in Fahrenheit, but we have like 16 or 17 degrees, and like a week ago we have minus 17, 16 degrees. So like 30
That's
degrees
a
difference
change.
in 1 week, right? So we're enjoying sun. All those people who are not on this call are enjoying the sun, I would say.
Oh, that's nice. You're in t-shirt. I'm in sweater. It's a little colder here for sure.
Oh, we have a heating gas inside the houses as well.
I gotcha. That's smart. You know, people in Texas right now are hurting and probably a little jealous for indoor heating.
Yeah, they might drop off from the call by now.
Yeah, even if they have electricity at all. So we were talking a little bit before this of what to talk about, and um, one thing that's interesting to me is just getting to know a little bit more about you and your coaching approach with organizations.
Oh, that's a long story, I would say. Making it short, I'm a CST, Certified Scrum Trainer as you, and I'm running a small company located in Poland, which is Central Europe for those who haven't seen that part of the map. So we mostly focus on the Polish market, which has its specific constraints. Like,
Mhm.
for example, you should speak Polish to do a good lot of coaching here. That's a superpower that the other coaches need to have here. But also we grow as both as a coaching organization as a training company. So the coaching approach kind of depends on the organizations we work with. My favorite organization are the smaller one,
Mhm.
and the reason for that is I can see the results quite quickly. So when the moment you go to the bank, or the moment you go to the large organization,
Mhm.
uh, between the moment you start doing something and you see the results, it takes time. And usually I need to see those results faster. So I do prefer smaller organization. Doesn't mean that I'm not working with the large organization, but like the one to choose from is the smaller one. And also they often have a specific kind of problem. Like we had a good idea a few years ago. We started like 5 people company, and we ended up with like a 30 people company, or 60 or 100 or 200, and we have no idea why the things we used to do in the past doesn't work anymore.
Mhm. That makes sense. So I'm hearing a couple of things. Speaking native is important. So in Poland, speaking Polish. And I would agree with you that that could be generally applied. When, for instance, I'm in China, uh, the people they're talking, they struggle to talk in English for me to understand. And I think it would be better for you to understand and talk to each other. Don't try to really talk to me. And then I was hearing as well in Poland, maybe there's certain kinds of companies that you work with from big to small, and you like smaller companies. I don't know, maybe they're more nimble, resilient,
Sexy.
adaptable. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then as they grow, that's where it's difficult. Yeah.
So I'm gonna
So,
start with the first one.
okay.
Yeah. So assuming that most of your guests are the US based, so you may not seen this problem often. So let's go with this one.
Okay.
So basically, what you have is you get two kinds of countries, except for the when the English is the mother tongue. You have two kinds of countries. You have a countries like Poland where English is quite common, so often you can go for the training or you can go for the coaching with the external coach.
Mhm.
And you have a countries with mostly focus on the local market, like China, Japan, Russia. The specific is like they have the market is big enough that they don't need to learn English for doing the business, right? And you can see like there is more chance you get people from Poland speaking English than from China and Russia. Not because they cannot learn this language, is they don't have to. Like you go China, there's 1.5 billion people living there, and there is a really huge market. If you think about this, like a Europe plus the US, you have 800 millions, and that is half of the China. So thinking about the large market, that's not Europe, that's not the US, basically right now. Mm-hmm. So there's one thing. So you can do coaching. You can do coaching in Poland. The thing is, the moment you try to understand what is happening in the dynamic situation, like a retro, like a planning or daily, they can try to do this in English, but it's harder for them, right?
Exactly. And I would rather them talk in their native language. Sure, it's more difficult for me to understand. However, I always feel like it's tough to understand a team and an organization, and even in English, they speak in code, right? Their organizational code. I'm like, what do they really mean by that? And so I'm sure at least speaking the same language, Polish, would help you maybe ask the right kinds of questions.
Yeah, so what we figure out is the moment we work with the partners from the US or the West Europe, because there is a lot of knowledge outside Poland we want to bring to Poland. So the moment we work with those people is basically we try to pair with some local coach, right? So we get someone from the local, from Procognita locally, but we also have people from the US, from Western Europe, working with our customer as much as we can, right?
I see. So with partners, if somebody doesn't speak the native tongue, for instance, if you and I were working in an org, then we would pair up so that I could turn to you and say, hey, what's up here? And you could tell me in English, or I could say, could you ask them about why everybody looks so like closed up? And you could talk to them then in Polish.
That is one thing. That's yeah. You go for one kind of meetings, and local Agile coaches can go for the different kind of meetings. So you get some meetings in English, and you have some meetings like a retro. I mean, this is super difficult to run it in if not your native language, especially if you go into the difficult conversation. If you have what went well, what could be improved, that's super easy. That's not the retro much, right? But if you deep dive into the serious problem, you do deep dive into the dynamic of the cooperation. Now it becomes harder to talk efficiently in the second language.
Yeah, I smile because it's just difficult. The crucial conversations, almost, I think, regardless of language. And I want to maybe go back to the kinds of organizations that you like. You were saying smaller. Are there also some vertical that you like, that you see embraces the growth mindset, or what do you enjoy when you're working with an organization?
So one thing you said earlier is like the specification, the context of Polish market, and one of the interesting things here that happened here over the last 2 decades is like mostly we used to be an outsourcing country for the West Europe and the US. So long time ago, I started working for Motorola, which still has a local hub here in Krakow, Poland. I used to work for Sabre, again, US-based company. So what is changing
with both those?
You see that. So what is changing right now after those 20 years is we get more and more local startups, and some of those startups you can see them on the global market, which is great. And we have more opportunity not to just work with the local company, sorry, with the international companies with the headquarters, in other country, but also with the local company. And the difference here is like often when you outsource software development, even if you do this in-house, like you have a separate branch in Poland, but it is still the same company. you often outsource the software development, but you don't outsource the product development. So you end up with having a decision maker in the US, and you end up with having the coders or implementation people in Poland. Interesting. The consequence of that was that in Poland, we started experimenting with Agile quite early, because the thing you could do is not experiment with the product itself. You cannot change much product because the decision was already made there, but you can try to do something about the way you develop the product. So we did a lot of interesting experimentation with the software development, like how you do this from the engineering perspective, which was kind of interesting. So the Agile was kind of, I would say, Poland was kind of early market for Agile movement. But the consequences of that is like the moment you go into the smaller components, there's higher chance that you can talk with the deciders, not just the people who do the coding and the decision is being made outside Poland, but also with the people who make a decision about the product, about the market, about how we make money, what we invest into, and the conversation are deeper, because you can improve the software development by increasing the famous velocity a little bit, but you can make a huge change when you focus on the outcome of the what you do. So you can deliver a lot of feature no one cares about, and you can double your productivity in the feature no one cares about, or you can deliver less feature but the more important feature, right? And the moment when you start working with the second component, then the options you can the changes you can do in the company are way bigger. The moment when you're focused on the product development, not on the feature delivery.
Yeah, I can totally relate. And seeing that end to end, from deciding to doing, and in larger organizations, I feel like when I work with teams, with doers, with the coders, there is a limited ability to change things, but there are still things to change and places to help that team take control of their own destiny. And that grows when product decisions are going alongside the product development. And so that's the kind of company you like. When you see that, from deciding to doing, what changes in your approach?
Not sure if I get it. What do you mean by that?
Well, when maybe headquarters is sending direction to a team and you're working with that team, there's only a certain amount you can do. But when those deciders are right there and you're working with them as well, I'm wondering how that changes your own coaching approach with those kinds of organizations.
Gotcha. So thinking about the organization, we think about around 4 levels in the organization. You have the people who do work, so the doers, right? Yeah. We often call it the lower level, but it's the most important level in the organization, because they are delivering value. All there are basically are overhead, right? Yeah. And then you have a first line of managers, then you have a senior management and some CEO. Smaller companies usually have 3 levels. And the point is, the moment you go into the large companies, it's super hard for you to work with all 4 levels at the same time. Now, when you work with this outsourcing company, then you have an often situation when you have a lower level and the first line managers in Poland, for example, and anything else is West Europe, USA, whatever, right? So you can work here, but it's super hard to work with those 2 levels. Now, when I go into the smaller components, I have those basically 4 levels squeezed into 3 levels, because you don't need to have 4 levels in a smaller organization. And yeah, I can try working with all those 3, although I still have not figured out how to do it well, because the thing is, the moment you focus on the top level, then there's somehow you get the distance between the doers and you. The moment you focus on the doers, and then you build the distance between you and the senior management, because they think they hire you to solve the problems on the team level. No. Gotcha. And still don't know how to do it well. So this is something I'm I'm still trying to figure out how you move. And one of the things we are focusing on right now is to have two coaches in the organization, not because of their skill set, but because of their focus. So you have one who is body for the doers and one who is body for the CEO.
I see. And you're saying then organizations might have two cultures, the decider level and the doer level, and so having people to focus in those two camps or those two cultures becomes important.
It's more about I'm more talking about the coaches, not the culture.
Oh, coaches. Pardon.
Yeah. It's more, yeah. So it's more about they may be different culture, but in this context, it's like the moment I work with the CEO, then I get a distance from to the doers, right?
Yep.
The moment I work with the doers, and the CEO treating me like this is the guy who is going to solve the team problem. This is one of the. I don't know how this is Polish specific. I don't think so. But the moment you get focused on the team, then the CEO decide, okay, my work is done. I hire someone to fix the team, and he is supposed to work with the team. Don't go to me unless you have the results and tell me what are the results. So don't bother me. And this is the challenge we have. So the moment you wanna change the organization, you need to work with the CEO, right?
Yeah.
And the moment you start working with the CEO, then you have a distance to the doers.
I get that. And I find, for instance, I'm struggling with this in a current client. I was hired by the CTO asking me to pay attention to a couple of teams, and they wonder if I'm a spy for the CTO. And I don't feel the trust, the psychological safety when I'm around. And so I'm working on that trust building with the doers that I've already developed with the decider. And I find that to be very difficult to work on those levels. And then I also find, and I'm wondering if this is true in Poland and Central Europe, is when I ask executives why Agile, they pretty much say, because Agile. And that makes it really hard to change things because I don't think agility itself is a reason. Do you suffer that sort of thing over there?
So before going to this one, I'm going to comment on the previous one. So you said that about the building trust. And the thing is that the challenge we have right now is like we can communicate remotely like we do right now. The challenge is it's super hard to build the relationship remotely. And most of the organization don't notice that there's about relationship. Often you go to the companies when there's a culture, no camera on the cloud. Like this is for me like this is disaster. So what I do anytime I go for this kind of meetings, I just turn on my camera and wait for the people either you're gonna turn on the camera or not. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But any meeting they see me, right? So you know, so they see that I'm there. I'm listening to them. I'm not coding at the same time. I'm not cleaning my nose and all this stuff, right? So they can see me. Yes. In the old days before 2020, basically my working station was the coffee machine because this is where most of the conversation was happening, and you could do the relationship building there. So you can just have a conversation with these people and tell them, oh, by the way, I'm here too. But this is not the formal introduction. This is not the formal way of doing this one. So I'm missing this much. I'm still learning how to build this build this relationship. And coming back to the question about the doing Agile for Agile, what I do discover is like a CEO often knows what is the problem they have in the organization. Like a top management, they know what is the problem. They may not be able to tell this easily. So one of the things is you need to discover with them. You need to run the workshop with them to tell them what is important. And there are different ways of having this conversation. Those doers at the lower level, they know what is the problem because they have a contact with the customer who is yelling at them. Mm-hmm. Often this middle management who is at risk by the change. So this is this is we have. Now, if I go to the company and the conversations we want to do Agile because we want to do Agile, then most likely this is not the customer for me.
I see.
So we're gonna have a nice conversation. I'm gonna tell them, thank you very much for having this conversation. Most likely you need to find someone else.
Gotcha.
But often what I discover the moment I talk with the CEO, not talking about with the middle management, that could be a different conversation, but the CEO, CTO, they know what is the problem they're trying to solve. And because they see the data, they see the bottom line, they see the finances, they see the market is shrinking, they see the competition is growing, and they see the problem. And basically, you ask them about this is gonna tell you, oh, we're losing the great people. Oh, by the way, how about we create a team so you have a knowledge sharing and you grow your people, they have a better working condition. That's a good idea. Oh, we have a approach to do that, right? We have a idea on the team-based software development. How about that, right? So you solve the real problem. So you don't give them the solution to being agile. You give them the solution to the problem they have.
Yes, I hear you. And you were saying that in Poland, that's where the outsourcing goes. There was earlier adoption of some of these agile approaches, and I'm sure that really helps at that doer level. But there is that squeeze right in the middle, and I think having empathy with middle management becomes important. And so I guess the question is, how do you serve their needs and understand what's important for them and that they don't get lost in all this?
So one of the important thing I get the feeling that some people do forget about this one is like the people on the middle level, they are super smart people, and they are on the middle level because they are super smart people, right? And the point is that the moment they hire agile coach, is often we're there to remove their basically what they do, right? If you're responsible, if you're leader for the developers in Java, you're the tester lead, you're someone else lead. The moment we start building the team-based organization, you're all going to be reduced, at least minimalized. So basically what we do, we destroy their world, right? And this is the challenge. Now, so the point is like they need to buy into this change, and this is one of the I believe one of the most difficult part of this conversation, because you can do a little bit on the bottom line of the organization, bottom level of the organization, those doers level, but you cannot have an impact on the business if you don't change the whole structure, right? If you don't have support from the whole structure. So the question is, if we talk about those middle managers, is what are the risks they're going to be impacted by if they stay with the current structure? Mm-hmm. So what they are losing and what they can gain by going into the new structure. And what I discover more often is basically those people on the middle level that are super busy with execution, so they don't have a time for the strategic work, like developing people, like developing more complex strategy than just let's do it, right? And the moment you show them that if you let go, people do work with this approach, so team-based approach, when the team make more decision, then most likely you're going to have more time for doing the strategic work and doing what matters. And often those people say, yeah, that makes sense for me. But again,
letting go of the execution to level up and think more about working. Pete Barron's, I was talking to him, and he was saying instead of working in the organization, it's working on the organization. And I like that. It feels more like that organizational strategy and structure and moving them up pretty much into the position they have and letting go of some of that doing and execution.
Yeah, you delegate what people can do, and you take over some of the responsibilities, so your manager can do also some more advanced stuff, right? Right. And if you think about the product owners, is basically you get exactly the same. And many product owners are starting as a business analyst. As long as they do the business analyst only, they're not going to become the product owner, right? But the moment as a product owner, I start doing product ownership and let the team do the business analysis, so help the team to understand how to do the business analysis. Then I can get more advanced into the strategic product development rather than just writing user story or whatever I do right now.
Right. Yeah. Really owning it and doing everything to make sure we understand customer needs, and then allowing even more analysis of the business, I would say, at that doer level once again, to try to expand that skill set at the team level and have them a little more business minded and let product owners own it, I think is what I'm
Yeah.
hearing.
And the thing is that the product owner should want it, right? So
Yes.
there's old presentation that is already like 5 years or so by now, which I did few times, and it's called speaking managerish. So you know how to convince your manager without being fired. So this is a conversation. You know, how you make your problem your manager problem, right? So how instead of going to manager and telling me solve my problem, it's like this is your problem. Now can I help you solving this problem, right? So how you work with the managers to make your organization more agile, right? Because they most likely going to like it as long as they see that there is a value for them.
Yeah, that's a certain dialect, I guess, when we were talking about coaching in Polish or English or whatever. And I'm saying even in English, it's hard to understand managerish, I think is how you put it. And understanding that dialect, understanding their problem and helping to solve that instead of saying, oh my gosh, I have all these problems working as a doer on a scrum team. It sounds like back to that empathy and building that relationship and being able to relate in that language and that perspective of that middle manager.
Yeah. Recently, I was reading some book by Peter Drucker, and basically that was about the you know the role of the manager. And one of the things is like most people they focus a lot about managing your reports, direct reports. So how do you manage direct reports? But what the most of the time that managers do, they manage their managers, right?
Yes.
So you know, and most if you go for an management course, they don't talk much about managing your manager. They do talk
Right.
about managing your direct reports, but not the manager. But most of the things you should focus on is like how you manage your manager, how you help your manager to be better.
Exactly. I think it was Drucker that was talking about, as a manager, spend 50% of your time managing yourself. Something like 35% managing peers, and then 15% managing up, leaving 0% to manage your subordinates. Let them manage themselves. And I think that becomes critical in some of these team-based approaches we're talking about.
Yeah, which is cool because the moment you see you have no time to manage people, you know, under you, then you discover you need to let them go do this, right? Which is great.
Exactly. I feel like, relating back to how you like to work with startups, the growing pains is when we start to maybe put more of that middle layer in that. Is that part of those pains and growth?
So my observation from the last year is if you think about Knefin from David Snowden, is we get this complex and complicated domains, or in your case that should be this one in the
yeah, the mirror.
So
and we'll put a
yeah,
link, but this kind of thing.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay.
So what I do is discover is that the company, when they grow, they move from one domain to another. This is something like no, the moment that Dave Snowden is going to listen to this podcast someday or so, he may not agree
be careful with showing that drawing then.
Yeah, but I'm fine with this one. So here's my understanding. It's like the moment we grow from one domain to another, then doing more of what we used to do is not going to solve the problem. So this is what we discover in software development. Like at the end of the project, we were saying, okay, if we only spend more time collecting the requirements, then we will solve the problem. And we spend more time collecting the requirements. And the next next project, we spend more time because we haven't discovered something. And then we do the same. And what do we say? So we work harder and harder, but it doesn't scale. So the thing is, the moment you move from the complicated to complex, it's not about doing harder what we already did, right? And this is where the company struggled because they were super efficient in some way of working.
Mhm.
And after growing, doing it more doesn't work anymore.
Right.
So the challenge they have is like we try harder, but we don't see any results. And either they figure out that by themselves, or they work very hard, or they slow, basically saying, okay, growing is not a good idea for our company. We're gonna stay small. I've seen a few companies saying, okay, we don't want to grow. That's their decision, right? But the moment when you grow, it's not about the size of the company so much, but one of the things when we say about this, small company, large company, is that you get more levels of the management. This is one of the level of the complexity. So the chance that the CEO knows what is happening on the ground floor is lower, basically, right? This is a PowerPoint based management often happening there, right? In a small company, when you have 6 people, the CEO knows exactly what the customers are saying because they call it him because they have his phone, so you can easily reach out. When your car is not working, you cannot call the CEO of your company. I mean, unless you have a Tesla, then you can type this on Twitter, and maybe Elon is going to answer this one. Most cases, you cannot reach the CEO. So you get a different kind of information transfer in the large organization. But basically, what I'm seeing is like we had a small, well working organization, we grow, and it stopped working. And we don't know why. And we try already for half a year or 1 year or 2 years, and it's this, we're still the same, running circles.
Yeah, you make me think about in startups, sometimes in job postings, they talk about wearing many hats and thinking through some of the Cynefin stuff and ritual entry and exiting of roles is that's easier to embrace complexity in a startup. And as we grow, there's more specialization. And so we try to put more rules in place and considered things more ordered rather than the unordered and non-predictive that really product development is. We start to think we can put order to this, and I call it the process death spiral. We just keep cycling around on do more, put more rules in place, and down we go. And
Yeah, so
trying to
go
block
on.
that death spiral.
Yeah. So basically, what you have is like you have people who are focused on some one area, and they become the leaders or the manager of that area, and you go more people into that area, and then you grow the area, and you figure out that each of those person in those area has their own specialization. So you grow those area and grow this area. I call it a CEO-centric organization because you have a CEO at the top, and you have all the functions at the bottom of the organization. The thing is that what you discover in those organizations, every single person, or like a 2 people, 1 person, they have their own backlogs. So we talk often, we are Agile, we have Scrum, and I go in there and I ask how many people can work on the most important item for you, and they say 1.
Yeah, me. I work on my
Yeah.
most important stuff. Okay.
Yeah. And you figure out that there is like from the organization perspective, you go and ask here what is the most important thing. They're going to tell you this is the most important thing. And I ask them, okay, can you move all the people to work on this one? And they say, what do you mean? Oh, we can move
Right.
1 person. And we did this because we make a lot of specialization before, right? So he specialized in this model for the last 20 years. And anytime there was a change in this model, so we get a new feature going into this model, he was the person who is going to do the change because he knows the model. So he get more knowledge about this model, right?
Yeah.
And we end up with a lot of buzz factor in the organization, and we end up with organization that cannot add a feature quickly because this guy has already a long backlog of other features that are necessary and critical.
Yeah, wow. You're really, I think, maybe touching a nerve. I'm feeling the stress of what you're talking about working with different clients. And um, with that deep specialty, I was working with a client and their main headquarters has 40,000 people. And when I said, tell me about your Scrum team structure, they'd say, well, we have 1 here, we have 2 4 time zones away, we have another 2 3 time zones in the other direction, and so on. And in a team of 7, they might span all time zones across the world and say, what do you think? Could we find 3 to 9 people here at headquarters that could work together? And they just look at me like I'm bonkers. There's no way. We have too many specialists. They own these features. We rely on them for those features. And like you said, and that doesn't survive. I like to think about the lotto count rather than the bus count. If that person won the lottery, they're like, I'm out. And then no more of that feature.
Yeah, and you get that, and you get that, like you lose one person, and basically the whole development stops, or you pay a hell of a lot of money for that person to go back, right?
Yeah.
So
or you contract. You don't think about people around. That starts some of that outsourcing game too. I find, like, let's get a vendor involved, and I think that goes back into some of that process death spiral that we just had. What are our best practices? What are the rules? Let's put more rules in. That'll solve it. And one of the things I point out is Agile started, or Agile, I guess, because of heavyweight processes and trying to lighten it off and creating lightweight processes. They just didn't want to be known as lightweights. So they came up with the term Agile. How do we get back to this idea of lightweight, adaptive, as organizations grow?
So what is interesting, the more I work with the different companies, is that I discover most of them don't do heavy processes. So when I was working at Motorola, we've been CMM level 5. You remember this one? And if anyone on the video doesn't remember CMM, don't Google this one. Anyway, but that was a long story about the heavy process. So I know how the heavy process looks like. And that was a waterfall. That was a really good way of doing a waterfall. Not for the software development, that wasn't effective for the software development, but from the process perspective, that was a process-based approach. Okay. Now, what most companies do, this is something basically what is being called like a no-process process, right? Or the cowboy coding. You have plenty of people, you have plenty of managers, and those managers are trying to assign tasks to those people. So you get like 50 people in the organization. 20 managers, hopefully only, because sometimes you get the other way around, like 50 managers, 20 developers. And you end up with like having people assigning the task to the person, and you end up like I'm a developer, I can do 5 items in a week, and I have 20 on the plate, and I randomly select which I'm gonna do, right? So, and this is not the waterfall. They call it a waterfall, they call it Agile, but basically this is the no process or the cowboy coding, right? So most of the developers right now, I don't think they've seen a heavy process. So heavy process was 1990s.
Got it.
And the consequence of Agile approach is like, we don't have a heavy process, we don't have Agile.
No process.
No process.
Like, I just hand you work. Boom, boom, boom.
Again, that might be my customers. So we said I prefer working with the small companies, but even working with the large companies, I do see the tendency of this having no process approach. Okay, tell me from your perspective, your customers, are they waterfall based or more like a random approach to the software development?
I would say almost all of the above. There is some pockets of, especially with seasoned project managers, you'll see more process. And also by attitude, people that think more rules and telling people what to do will solve it, then there's more process there. And then there's some people that are very laissez-faire, hands-off, it's very ad hoc, whatever. And then some that Kanban or Scrum or whatever, those seems to be popular. And so it feels like it's almost like trying to play a bunch of games, like football. Now you might be thinking what Americans call soccer, and that's true. What I mean is I'll use the rules of American football. You'll use the rules of soccer. How are we going to win? We're all playing now by different rule sets, and that's what I see a lot. And trying to find some amount of structure and rules that allow for more growth and emergence of people to do their best work, to try to liberate people to do their best work.
Just to make it clear, a football means that you use foot for kicking the ball. So just to make it clear.
Incomprehensible. I don't know what you're saying.
Anyway, someone told me it's basically running with the egg, the American football. Anyway, but this is this is a separate story. So so I'm not saying there is no waterfall approach. I'm not saying there is no agile approach. What I'm hearing from you, so it's not even what I'm saying, but confirm me if I get it correctly. It's more about the person at the top of the part of the organization. So it's not even the organization specific. It's more about my part of my area.
Yeah.
That the one or the second approach.
Yeah. And I'm having a aha moment based on what you're saying is waterfall is and structured processes, those heavy things, are way in the past, maybe 20, 30 years. And so it's more about this dispatch of work. And absolutely, I see that way more work all around than people can do. And sometimes I'll try to help visualize that because it's so virtual and opaque. And so what are you doing? Put it on a sticky note, put it on the wall, and cover several rooms worth of stickies. And they're like, whoa, that's everything we're trying to do? Yeah, that looks like a lot.
Yeah. But the electronic tool, not to call the names, but electronic tool is going to take it all, right? So it's easy. It's easy to work in progress into the electronic stuff.
Yeah, you just spin up more hard drive if you run out of room. It's like that much for your digital tool.
No, you don't worry about the hard drive anymore. That's all 1990s investing.
That's exactly. Yeah, any digital tool, I say, looks to me like if I was on this side of the door with the peephole, I'm looking the wrong way through the peephole. You name the digital tool, it feels like that to me. And I just want to like crawl into them. I want to open that door and get inside the room and see what's going on.
Yeah. There was one thing talking about the process used in the different organizations. That is one thing that just came to my mind. I have no idea who was talking about this one. There was one conversation or one talk on some conference. Anyway, the bottom line was that the number of the people of developers broadly understood as people doing something with the code grow and double every 5 years. So that was a best guess of that person, based on the different data that he had. I have no idea who was that. What was this? What was this talk? Anyway, which means that if you think about we double number of developers every 5 years, which could make sense from my perspective. I look at the people doing the software development in most of the Polish companies. Again, US market is a little different because we started a little later than you. We didn't have so many computers in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that most of the people you talk with, they never seen waterfall. They have not been doing software development in the 1990s. They never. Yeah. I used when I started doing the Agile training, 10 years ago when I created Procognita, I used to explain people what is the problem with the waterfall and why waterfall is not gonna work for them. Right now, most I skip this one because I know that most likely they're using the no process, not the waterfall approach, or they think they use Agile and they use no process.
I love it. I'm gonna start using this no process.
I think I borrowed it from Robin Diamond. My version is cowboy coding. I don't know where I get this one.
All right. Well, I'm going to credit you. I just steal it. I like that. I'm going to take that. And we're getting pretty close here, Tomek, to the end of time. And for those watching, If you are learning something, consider liking this video and potentially subscribing. We'll put links in the description of things we've been talking about. And I want to hand it back to you for final thoughts.
Oh, that's a tough one without a question. I don't know. I'm the final phase is like the number of the organization are growing, the number of the problems they have are growing, not because there are new problems coming in, but mostly because the number of the companies having the same or similar problems is getting better, is getting bigger. So get more and more components. And what I discover, what is interesting, like when we talk about those single person backlogs, so a lot of backlogs in the organization, that's so common pattern that basically you could patent this in the US and get the money from every single company who is using this idea, but they don't know that they're but basically you go from one component to another component, and you can have the same conversation about, most likely you have a single person backlogs, and you call it Agile, you call it whatever, but as long as you have 200 people and 200 backlogs, then that's not gonna fly. And I guess if you look for the bottom line for today, that will be it. Reduce the number of the backlogs in your organization, or start with visualizing them and counting them, basically, because most likely you have them in Jira and you don't know them.
That's a good point.
And I use the Jira word.
Oh, careful.
Oops.
Oops.
Reduce
your backlog, right? Get
rid
of at least half.
But first of all, visualize the backlog, because many times people don't know, because they put it into one tool. But the thing is, if I can do one thing, then there's one backlog for me and a second backlog for you.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, thanks for your time. Let's end the stream. And that's it.